Saturn, the planet with its famous rings, will soon look empty. In March 2025, those rings will seem to disappear, making the giant planet look strange and bare. This is not far away. It is happening soon, and space is playing tricks on our eyes. The rings will come back, but for months, they will be almost impossible to see. Tune in as Saturn fades, a chilling hint that one day its rings may never return. Saturn, like Earth, doesn't just sit straight up, it tilts. Over its nearly 30-year orbit around the Sun, sometimes its rings are angled perfectly for us to admire, and other times they're turned just right so that we see them edge on. And here's the catch, those rings are ridiculously thin. In some places, they're barely 30 feet thick. That's thinner than a two-story building. When it tilts just right, the rings practically disappear from our perspective here on Earth. It's like trying to spot a piece of paper edge on from across the room. It's almost impossible to see. But what if I told you one day, those breathtaking rings might vanish? This rare event happens roughly every 15 years when Earth and the planet line up just so. The last time it happened was in 2009, and the next time after 2025 won't be until 2038. During these periods, its rings seem to fade into nothingness, but they're still there, just hidden in plain sight. On March 23, 2025, its rings will appear to vanish, and they'll stay mostly invisible for months. As it keeps moving, the rings will slowly start tilting back into view. By late 2025, they'll be visible again through big telescopes, and by 2027, they'll be fully back in their usual dazzling form for another 15 years. But don't think this is just some boring visual trick. Astronomers get excited about these moments. When its rings disappear, it's like peeling back a curtain, letting scientists study the planet itself without the bright glare of its rings in the way. In the past, these rare alignments have helped astronomers discover new moons around it, 13 of them to be exact. They even found the faintest, farthest ring, the elusive E ring, during one of these events back in 1966. Unfortunately, this time around, astronomers might not get the best view. It will be hanging out pretty close to the Sun from our perspective, making it tough to study. That means no major moon discoveries are expected, and no new ring revelations. Still, it's a spectacular reminder of how the universe constantly shifts and changes, sometimes in ways that play tricks on our eyes. Even though the rings are vanishing temporarily in 2025 due to the planet's tilt, it's a reminder that we live in a universe of constant motion. One day, future generations might only know it as a plain, featureless ball of gas, with no golden rings to admire. Right now, we're lucky enough to witness them in their full glory, even if they're only visible from the right angle. The brief disappearance in 2025 is just a preview of what could eventually happen for real. For anyone who has ever looked at it through a telescope and marveled at its beauty, this event is a chance to reflect on the fleeting nature of cosmic wonders. The universe is never still, and even the most majestic sights can change before our eyes. Its disappearing rings in 2025 will be just a momentary illusion, but they serve as a powerful reminder that nothing lasts forever, not even the most stunning features of our solar system. If you've got a telescope, or even just a friend with one, this is your chance to catch the rings before they fade from view. It is currently positioned in front of the Aquarius constellation. While it's not the brightest planet in the sky, it still stands out with its golden glow. Even a small telescope will reveal its rings, at least for now. Time is running out, and once the rings vanish from sight, you'll have to wait years before they fully return. A decade might not seem long in cosmic terms, but for a skywatcher, it's an agonizing wait. By September 2024, it will reach its best viewing position, standing opposite the Sun in the night sky. This means it will be fully illuminated, offering a prime chance to spot its rings before they narrow into near invisibility. But after that, the rings will start to flatten out, becoming harder and harder to see. By early 2025, there'll be nothing more than a razor-thin line. Then, after the crossing in March, the rings will slowly start tilting back into view. The process is slow and relentless, but it won't be until 2032 that they fully spread out again, once again framing the planet in all its glory. These ring plane crossings have actually helped astronomers make incredible discoveries. The rings, while stunning, reflect a huge amount of sunlight, making it hard to see anything around them. But when they vanish, faint objects become visible. Astronomers have used these events to spot several of its moons over the centuries, including Iapetus, Rhea, Dione, and Tethys. The last moon discovered during a ring plane crossing was found in 1980. Who knows what might be hiding in the shadows this time? While this upcoming ring plane crossing is just an optical illusion, its rings really are disappearing in a more permanent way. Scientists have found that the icy particles making up the rings are slowly falling onto the planet, pulled in by the planet's gravity. This phenomenon, sometimes called ring rain, means the rings won't be around forever. In fact, they may only have about 100 to 300 million years left before they completely disintegrate. That might sound like a long time, but in the grand scheme of the universe, it's just a blink of an eye. It was once thought to have formed with its rings, but recent research suggests they may be relatively young, only a few 100 million years old. If that's true, then we're incredibly lucky to live in a time when we can witness them at all. Future astronomers might only know it as a ringless gas giant, a pale shadow of the planet we see today. If you want to witness this strange event, don't wait. By early 2025, its rings will be nearly impossible to see. After the crossing in March, they'll start reappearing, but it will take years for them to spread out again. Then, in 2032, they'll be back in full display, offering another great viewing opportunity. Each time the rings vanish, we are reminded of just how fragile and fleeting these cosmic spectacles really are. With the rings gone, the real story begins. Saturn's famous rings are pulling a disappearing act, and it's not some sci-fi prank, it's just physics messing with our view. But this isn't just another blink and you miss it moment in space. This is part of a cycle that's been happening for billions of years, and it comes with some unsettling long-term consequences. Come March 2025, those dazzling icy loops, stretching wider than 30 Earths across, will appear to vanish from our view. Not because they're actually gone, but because the planet's tilt will make them nearly impossible to see from Earth. The rings are currently angled at just under 4 degrees, but soon they'll be lined up perfectly flat from our perspective, like trying to spot the edge of a razor blade from a football field away. Even the most powerful telescopes won't be able to capture much more than a faint hint of their presence. This is just another trick the planet plays on us, but it doesn't make it any less eerie to witness. The vanishing act is temporary, but there's a far bigger problem looming in the future. One day, the rings won't just be hiding, they'll be gone for good. Scientists estimate that within 300 million years, these celestial hoops will completely disappear. This isn't speculation. This is based on observable evidence. What's happening is that the planet's own gravity, along with its magnetic field, is dragging the rings down in a steady shower of icy particles. This phenomenon is known as ring rain, and it's essentially a slow-motion cosmic cleanup. NASA scientists first noticed this process decades ago, and recent studies confirm that it's happening much faster than expected. The rings themselves are made up of billions of fragments, mostly ice, mixed with rocky debris and dust. Some chunks are as small as grains of sand, while others are as large as mountains. These rings didn't always exist, and their origin is still a subject of debate among astronomers. Some believe they formed from the remnants of comets or asteroids, that were shattered by the planet's immense gravitational pull. Others suggest they could be the remains of a moon that was torn apart millions of years ago. Whatever the case, their time in the spotlight is limited. Beyond their beauty, the rings play an important role in understanding the evolution of planetary systems. These rings provide a glimpse into the kinds of collisions and formations that shaped not only this gas giant, but also the early solar system. Scientists believe that planetary rings might be a natural phase for many worlds, forming from debris that never coalesced into moons or breaking apart from existing ones. If these rings are disappearing, it might suggest that all planetary rings eventually meet the same fate. This cosmic recycling raises another question. Were these rings always this massive? Some theories suggest they might be relatively young, possibly forming only a few 100 million years ago. If that's the case, then humanity is living in a lucky era where we get to witness the planet at its most majestic. Future civilizations may only see a bare gas giant with little evidence of its former splendor. Despite their inevitable fate, the rings still have a while before they fully disappear. Even if the current estimates hold true, 300 million years is an enormous amount of time, far beyond the span of human existence. But in the grand scale of the universe, it's just a blink. The solar system has existed for more than 4 billion years and will continue evolving long after the rings are gone. The gas giant, the show-off of the solar system, the planet that made all the others look dull in comparison, just pulled a disappearing act. Its legendary rings, those dazzling loops of ice and rock that had been swirling around it for who knows how long, were vanishing. Not over millions of years like scientists had predicted. No, this was happening much faster, and now the planet looks, well, kind of naked. The rings weren't just for show. They played a huge role in keeping its moons in line, like a cosmic referee maintaining order in a chaotic game. Some moons relied on them for stability, while others interacted with the debris to fuel their own geologic activity. But with the rings fading, the entire system was thrown into chaos. Enceladus, one of the most famous moons, was in real trouble. This ice-covered world had been spewing water from its hidden ocean, teasing scientists with the possibility of alien life. But here's the kicker. Those dramatic plumes, they relied on the E-ring. With the ring disappearing, the icy particles feeding Enceladus's eruptions dried up. The geysers weakened, the once glimmering ice darkened, and whatever might have been swimming beneath the surface suddenly had a much bleaker future. And then there was Titan. The reigning champion of weird moons, Titan had lakes of liquid methane, thick orange clouds, and a mysterious climate cycle that almost mirrored Earth's. But the rings had been subtly stabilizing the gas giant's gravitational field, and without them, that balance was shifting. Titan's weather patterns started acting up, its methane lakes evaporating unpredictably, and the once steady rhythms of its seasons got thrown off track. The changes weren't immediate, but they were creeping in, reshaping the surface and sky of one of the solar system's strangest worlds. As the planet changes, everything around it does too. Find out how. Further out, the smaller moons were having an even worse time. Some had already been on the edge of chaos, tumbling erratically through space like cosmic debris, barely holding themselves together. Without the rings to anchor their movements, their fates became uncertain. Some, unable to find a new stable orbit, were slowly dragged into Saturn itself, vanishing into the gas giant's crushing depths. Others were flung outward, breaking free from the planet's influence entirely, doomed to wander the outer reaches of the solar system as rogue objects with no home. But it wasn't just the moons that were feeling the consequences. Saturn itself was transforming. The rings had reflected sunlight, played a part in its magnetic field, and even influenced its weather. Now, with nothing left to scatter light and heat in the same way, The gas giant's upper atmosphere was absorbing more radiation than ever before. Storms became unpredictable. Cloud bands shifted in unexpected ways, and Saturn's familiar look began to morph into something new and unrecognizable. Beneath the swirling storms and deep inside Saturn's core, something even stranger was happening. Scientists had debated for years whether the rings affected the planet's internal structure, but now the answer was clear. Without their mass, Saturn's internal oscillations were changing, subtly altering the way gravity and pressure worked within the planet. Over thousands of years, this shift could change the very nature of the gas giant's internal composition, an outcome no one had seen coming. And the ripple effects didn't stop there. Saturn's magnetosphere, the invisible bubble that shielded the planet from cosmic radiation, had also been influenced by the rings. Now, with their disappearance, the planet's ability to interact with the solar wind has changed. More charged particles were slamming into Saturn's atmosphere, altering its electromagnetic environment. Space probes still lingering in the area picked up the disturbances, sending back data that painted a picture of a world in flux. The disappearance of Saturn's rings wasn't just an aesthetic loss. It was a fundamental transformation, a rewriting of the dynamics that had shaped the planet and its system for eons. The moon struggled to adjust, the atmosphere churned with new patterns, and Saturn itself was in the process of becoming something entirely different. Future astronomers would look back at the time when Saturn had rings as a fleeting chapter in the planet's history. The rings, for all their grandeur, had never been permanent. They were just a phase, a brief moment in cosmic time. And now Saturn stood bare, no longer the iconic jewel of the solar system, but something else, an evolving world, proof that even in the vastness of space, nothing stays the same forever. But that wasn't the end of the story. This wasn't just about Saturn looking different in the night sky. The loss of the rings meant a full-scale upheaval of the balance that had existed in the Saturnian system for millions of years. Every part of it, from the smallest grain of ice to the largest moon, was being forced to adapt. The process hadn't been instant, but it had accelerated in ways no one saw coming. The once subtle ring rain, the slow drizzle of ice particles falling into Saturn's atmosphere, had turned into something much more dramatic. Instead of trickling down over millions of years, the material was plummeting towards Saturn at an alarming rate. The planet's gravity had been tugging on the rings since they formed, pulling the particles down like an unstoppable cosmic waterfall. But something had shifted. A tipping point had been reached, and the rings were collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. Astronomers on Earth and those aboard space probes orbiting Saturn watched in shock as the process unfolded. The once bright bands of ice and rock dimmed, breaking apart into thinner and thinner strands before vanishing altogether. The planet that had once been the crown jewel of the solar system was losing its signature feature before their eyes. What happened next was even more unsettling. Without the stabilizing mass of the rings, Saturn's gravitational field wasn't just shifting, it was sending shockwaves through its entire system. Moons that had spent eons locked into predictable orbits were suddenly adrift. Some were still relatively stable, their mass large enough to resist the changes, but others weren't so lucky. One by one, they began to show signs of orbital decay. The small, fragile moons that had once skimmed the edges of the rings were the first to go. Without the gravitational nudges that had kept them in line, their paths became erratic. A few were pulled into Saturn's atmosphere, where they were torn apart, their remains adding to the growing storm of debris spiraling into the gas giant. Others, instead of falling inward, were flung outward, ejected from the system entirely, their futures uncertain as they drifted into the abyss of space. Even the larger moons weren't immune. The shifts in Saturn's gravity were like invisible hands reshuffling the entire structure of its system. Titan, Enceladus, and the others were still in orbit, but their movements had changed. Seasons on Titan, already slow and strange compared to Earth's, were becoming even more erratic. The methane lakes that covered its surface responded in unpredictable ways, evaporating faster in some areas, forming new deposits in others. The delicate equilibrium that had made Titan such a fascinating Earth-like world was beginning to crumble. And deep below Saturn's clouds, the gas giant itself continued its slow transformation. Without the rings scattering light and energy, its atmosphere was heating in unexpected ways. Scientists had always thought Saturn's weather was complex, but this was something different. Giant storms, far larger than anything seen before, were erupting at new latitudes, reshaping the planet's climate. Could Saturn's ringless future cause even bigger disruptions to its moons and atmosphere than we realize? Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.